What's your most pressing voiceover business or marketing question? That's what the Everyday VOpreneur Summer Series is all about. Inviting voice actors to come onto the show, ask the question, and get, hopefully, an intelligent and a helpful answer, although I make no guarantees. So today, we're welcoming to the show Bradley Hallard. Thanks for coming on. What is your question?
Well, thank you for doing this summer series, Mark. It's been enjoyable so far, and I appreciate you taking my question, which is the balance between what is that balance between putting all your eggs in one VO genre basket, if you will, or that balance of not spreading yourself too thin. I'm from my perspective coming from the world of audiobooks and commercial, which
Okay.
are vastly different in terms of not just the technique and the skills involved specifically for that genre, but also who you market yourself to, whether it's
Sure.
publishers or direct production companies, things like that. They're very different, two different buildings on the voiceover university campus, if you will. So trying to
Yes.
figure out that balance between especially those two genres for me.
It's an interesting question because I think it's really easy to want to try to do all the things. And maybe not
All the
specifically all
things.
the things, but we want to do a bunch of the things, right? There's probably a number of different genres that interest you, just like there's a number of different genres that interest me. That's just the way it is, right? Everybody's got those genres that they're interested in. So we want to be able to do all of those things, but we also want to be able to do them well. And I'm guessing for most people, we also want to be able to do them profitably, right? At the end of the day, it's really nice
Bingo.
to have, yeah, it's really nice to have some money coming in.
Yeah.
So trying to find the balance is trying to balance all of those different things. But I mean, for me, at the end of the day, I'm a business guy and I'm gonna follow the money. And so very often my decision-making process is influenced by where is the money coming from. So how much time or effort I may devote to the pursuit of a particular genre, whether that's learning the skill to be able to do that genre or investing in the demos and the coaching for that genre or investing in the time in the marketing for that genre. It's really about, for me, following the money. And, is the money there? Can I make the money? Am I already making the money? So that's part of it. I think one of the interesting things, and I'm not an expert on audiobooks by any stretch of the imagination. Mostly I'm terrified of them just because of the commitment that is required. And I don't know that I have that commitment and stamina in
And there
me.
is a commitment. Yeah.
Yeah, it is a huge commitment. I have massive
Hmm.
respect for people who can do it. But some of the voice actors that I've worked with who are doing it well have figured out a system for themselves in that they know realistically what they can handle from a workload standpoint. I know that I can comfortably and reasonably do X number of books per month. And so then they build their schedule around that. And if that's going to be the basis of your business, the audiobooks are going to be the basis of your business, then you fill in the blanks, throughout the rest of the month. That's where when that commercial pops in, when that corporate video pops in, the explainer, whatever, you fit that in, but reasonably I can do X number of hours in the booth per day. And if I have X number of hours in the booth per day and my record to edit ratio is whatever it is, like you can kind of calculate out and figure out comfortably, I can do comfortably one book a month, or I can comfortably do two books a month and still have some time left over for pursuing some of these other genres that I want to pursue. So is that kind of what you're trying to figure out right now? How do I balance that way? Or is it more like I've been doing audiobooks, I've made some money on audiobooks. I don't want to do audiobooks anymore. I really want to get into commercial.
I think I think there's a little bit of both in what you're saying. I do know that from an audiobook standpoint, there is, and maybe not the case with some of the other genres, especially commercials, which can be hit or miss in terms of the timing of projects
Yes.
and how often they come along. But with audiobooks, you can establish that foundation, and how I've kind of mapped it out in my head. So like, okay, audiobooks can be the foundation where
Yeah.
so many of the most successful narrators can have themselves booked out for several weeks, several months in
Oh,
advance. So that
100%.
can be the foundation. And then once you kind of establish that, as you said, that routine or that schedule for yourself, then you can, okay, I'm going to do my audiobook from 8 a.m. to noon. And then in the afternoon, work on auditions for some of the other other genres or whatever might be on my plate throughout the day. So I think that's kind of how I envision it. But as you're building up to that point, until audiobooks are that established part of your routine, but also not wanting to let some of the other opportunities, auditions go by. And I guess it's more of a just establishing that routine, and while still trying to figure out, it's how I envision it, but making that a reality, I guess, is kind of part of the question that I have for myself, building that out.
It sounds like partly it comes down to scheduling. And so part of that is just determining what is your record ratio. So what is your record time per finished hour for an audiobook, right? And that's something you can figure out as you get a few books under your belt. You'll start to figure out, you know what, for every finished hour of audio, it takes me
About
two
two to
hours in the
one. It's
booth,
about
right?
2 to 1 for me. Yeah.
Okay.
That's,
So
yeah.
that's really helpful to know that, right? So now if you've got a word count for the book, you can pretty much figure out how long the book is going to be, right? That's going to give you how many finished hours. So now if you know how many finished hours, you can figure out, okay, 2 to 1, that it's going to take me, for a 10-hour audiobook, it's going to take me 20 hours in the booth, for example. Then you've got to calculate in your edit time, proof time, whatever. If you're doing that, I mean, if you can
Mm.
outsource that, even better.
Yeah.
But once you figure that out, then you can sort of sit down and look at, okay, the schedule you mentioned. I want to be able to work on audiobooks from 8 until noon every day. So if I want to be able to work on audiobooks from 8 until noon every day, knowing that I have a 2 to 1 record ratio and it takes me X number of hours to do and to edit a finished hour. So really it's about figuring out what is my delivery time for a full finished hour. So maybe it's 4 to 1. Let's just say for the fun of it. It's, for every 1 hour of finished audio, I've got a couple hours in the booth, I got an hour of proofing, I got an hour of editing. So 4 to 1, we'll say. Now you can sit down and you can do the math of realistically, I can do X number of books per month, keeping that 4 hour a day schedule, giving me my time in the afternoon to then pursue some of the other genres. I think one of the things that's really interesting about audiobooks is it's probably the closest that you can get yourself to a steady paycheck in this industry if you can get yourself set up, right? Once you're established.
Correct. Yeah.
Like you said, commercial is hit and miss. E-learning, hit and miss. I got some people that send me stuff quarterly. I got some people that send me stuff annually. I got some people that send me stuff monthly. Explainer videos, corporates, all that sort of stuff just pops up randomly. I mean, automotive, I suppose, is probably pretty consistent. You're at the beginning of the month, you're going to have commercials coming in every month.
Right.
Maybe promo to a degree, but audiobooks feels like the closest that you're ever going to come to being able to set office hours and build a relatively consistent schedule once you've figured out what your times are and your ratios and everything. And so that might be what you're actually aiming towards. If you still want to keep doing the audiobooks and you still enjoy them and enjoy having that consistent income, but giving yourself a little bit of flexibility and breathing room to be able to pursue some of the other genres, that might be what you're looking at right there. And you're right. There are audiobook authors who have themselves booked out 6, 8 months in advance sometimes. And I mean, as a business guy, even when I say that out loud, I'm like, man, there is some seriously mass appeal to that. It's still not enough to convince me because I'm still completely terrified of audiobooks,
Right. Yeah.
but there is a mass appeal in knowing, okay, like I'm booked out for the next 6 months. I know that I'm going to make X number of dollars. I can plan around that. I can budget around that. And then I fill in the blanks with some of those other projects and other genres that I'm really interested in pursuing.
And that's, while I kind of envision that, as you're building up to that, like right now I'm, kind of booked out. I would say booked out, just have something on the calendar that I can be recording for the next, 4 or 5 weeks or so. But
Mhm.
as you start to try and build, okay, what's after that? What's after that? So then you got there's the marketing part of it with the audiobooks, which is publishers and producers that are completely opposite, and not opposite, but just totally different from that world of,
Commercial.
production companies that might do commercial, explainer, and some that do multiple different types of videos. So it's, the marketing that, it's 2 spreadsheets. There's the audiobook marketing
Yep.
spreadsheet, and I find the commercial slash maybe corporate production or spreadsheet that has those companies. So it's, while trying to still establish contacts and whether it's direct marketing, whatever it is. So as I'm trying to build out that schedule and that the routine, the appeal of that routine, just, And then, oh, by the way, it's the classes and stuff to keep working on the technique in both areas. So as I start to kind of, I can start feel my brain start, oh my gosh, I need this, you got to do this, and just keeping that all on one
Yep.
neat little schedule where you're not losing your mind every Sunday night where it's like, wait, what am I going to do this week, kind of thing. So, and maybe it's just kind of more of what my workflow is and figuring out what is the best workflow for me. But whether it's scheduling, the technique, the marketing, coaching, all of those things that kind of into one basket as you
Yep.
try and map out a couple of different genres. So it's.
I think right now I'd be looking at splitting up my marketing efforts between audiobook and commercial. I think you could probably you could just do a 50-50 split to make it easier, but maybe you do a 60-40 or a 70-30 split. And I would say I would probably lean a little bit heavier towards the commercial than I would towards the audiobook side. I I don't know why I think this. It's not based on science or data, but I feel like you're probably going to have to reach out to fewer publishers to generate an opportunity than you are going to have to reach out to commercial and video production companies in order to generate opportunities, just because of the fact that one good opportunity in audiobooks might keep you booked out for a month. If you know that one good audiobook can keep you booked out for a month, it seems like I don't have to connect quite as many people. So put a little bit more effort towards the commercial side, towards the production side. And so then figure out what is my available time to market? So, do I have an hour a day that I'm going to devote to this? Do I have 2 hours a day that I'm going to devote to this? And then sit down and make a goal for yourself. I want to reach out to, you know, uh, 25 publishers and 25 production companies a week. Maybe that's what it looks like. Or maybe it's 20 publishers and 30 production, or maybe it's 40 production and 10 publishers, but put some sort of a number on it that makes it measurable for you so that you can actually start to track, am I getting close? Am I hitting my goal? And then as you do it over time and you start to generate some results, you're going to start to be able to put together a little bit more data that's going to say, okay, well, I reached out to X number of publishers before I was able to generate a job. And so do that, kind of use that as your baseline. Okay, so for every so many publishers that I reach out to, and again, it's not exact science, but it gives you something that you can start to base some of your decision making and some of your schedule planning off of. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does because and I think I've had the ability, like I'm in New York City, and the big Audiobook Publishers Association, their annual conference was here back in March, and that allowed me to get in front of all these different publishers, and it's a great collection, a meeting of narrators and publishers and producers, and I didn't have that opportunity for other work obligations in terms of like VO Atlanta, for example. So I think that's where it's maybe I think I'd heard someone say like you ride the horse in the direction it's going. So like there's
Yep.
momentum in audiobooks, but I don't want that to mean that like I just want to brush aside commercial. It almost means that like, oh, I might have to, like you said, maybe ramp that up a little bit more in as I schedule things and map things out to at least maybe create a little more traction there. So it does, it's you just gotta, as you said, kind of work with the numbers and the data and feel what
I think that's going to
feels
be
right.
helpful for you because it's going to give you a better sense of, okay, once you start to get an idea of what your hit ratio is, as far as, okay, I reached out to this many people to get this many responses, I reached out to X number of people to get an opportunity, you can start to track that. Then you can start to plan a little bit further going forward. But as you start to build some publishers up and you start to be able to book yourself out, it's also going to build a little bit more flexibility into your schedule, because once you've got a couple of books in the pipeline, so to speak, right, you might be able to take a break from doing a little bit of audiobook marketing for a little while, put a little bit more effort into the commercial, and then work away at your books. And then when you get to a point where you're like 4 to 6 weeks out before and no other book is going yet, then shift it back a little bit. And there's not, I really don't think there's an exact science to this. I think a lot of it is just us as voice actors trying to figure out what's the work that we really want to do, what's the work that we're really ultimately interested in, and how do we build a schedule that allows us to be able to pursue all of those different interests. And that's, it sounds like a non-answer, but that's the thing that we all have to think about, right? I don't plan my schedule around audiobooks because that's not something that I'm going to actively pursue. The bulk
You
of
mean
my
this
marketing efforts
conversation hasn't, convinced you a little bit
hasn't
that it might
hasn't
be?
convinced me yet. I did a podcast interview with Sean Pratt maybe about a year ago, and as I was doing that interview with him, I was like, man, he is selling me on this, and he doesn't even realize that he's selling me on it. The stability of it, but I mean, for me, I look at, okay, I want to do e-learning. I love doing e-learning. So, a good chunk of my effort goes to e-learning, but I really want to pursue documentary. And so a big chunk of my effort is going towards documentary right now. And so I'm just making a point of if I can reach out to X number of leads per week, then I want a percentage of those to be in the e-learning space, and I want a percentage of those to be in the documentary space. And if I get a couple of e-learning jobs on the go, land a couple of new e-learning clients, maybe I just reduce the number of e-learning leads that I'm reaching out to for a little while, put a little bit more effort into documentary, trying to get that job or get on that roster or, get on that filmmaker's radar or whatever. And so it's really just about it is about finding that balance of what you want to do as a voice actor. I mean, I wish that there was a secret rocket science formula that said, this many people and contact this many people and do this percentage and all of that. But unfortunately, it's not that easy.
You're right. If only it was. And I do think too, kind of going back on some of your other the summer series episodes, like also not just being able to narrow it down even more. And I think I certainly can do this and work towards this as like the unique value proposition and stuff to get even more specific. So where it's just commercials or just audiobooks, and it's like with my sports broadcasting background, it's like the sports books or
Yeah.
different types. And I think that's being a little more targeted with it, and I think will hopefully, as I start to kind of map that out, the brainstorming things you've discussed in Playbook and other places, that can maybe help me target a little bit more, as opposed to just saying, production companies. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you just said the one thing, which was your sports background and sports books. Like that'd be number one for me if I'm going to start marketing to publishers. Who are the publishers that are producing those books, and how do I get on their radar? And how do I lean into my background in sports and enable to be to leverage that? Who is already potentially in my network from my history in sports that I could lean into? And who do they know? Could they get me in the door with somebody? Could they give me a referral or a recommendation? And so then that makes the marketing a little bit easier. So I definitely think there's something to that. When you narrow down your value proposition, it can certainly help you figure out areas where you might be better served by marketing. And because you do bring something special to the table there, it could be that you don't have to reach out to as many people in order to get access to that first opportunity because you bring something unique specifically to what they're doing or the type of book that they're doing.
It's funny to kind of bring this back around to the differences between commercial and audiobooks. Is that, like, when I first started dabbling in commercial work coming from broadcasting, it was like I almost had to, like, put aside and almost not tell people, like, I have the broadcasting background, because how it is with commercials, and having Tina
It's the
Marasco on, it's
kiss
like,
of
not
death.
announcer. Exactly. And then you start diving into audiobooks, and it's like you meet these producers and publishers. It's like, wait, you used to be a broadcaster, like, sports, well, that can help, or your teaching
Yep.
background can help. And it's like, wait, so I'm not supposed to run from that anymore. So just to kind of give you an idea of some of the differences, and that's
Yep. No, and
just what
that's
I've
totally
decided to
valid.
pursue, just how they diverge. And it's like,
Yep.
commercial, like, no, none of that matters. Audiobook is like, it all matters,
Yep.
if that makes any sense.
Yep. No, that does make sense. And I understand where that would create a little bit of confusion, but I definitely think that that's something that you could be leaning into in the audiobook space. But then I also think that maybe that's not something you lean into in the commercial space, but maybe it's something that you lean into in another genre that you haven't even thought about yet. Like I don't know if you noticed, there's a lot of content that gets produced for sports.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And here I am, like, not mentioning that's part of my background. It's like, no, wait, I did that. Or you know what I mean? Or seeing, like, someone put out, like, I have a sports, play by play. I got a spot in a commercial doing a play by play. And it's like, wait, I did that, or whatever it might be, the sports book, or the sports broadcaster in a commercial. Like,
Well,
it's all
but
there. And it's a
also
matter of, yeah.
it's also the narration content, the documentary content, the docu-series content, like all I'm thinking about these ESPN, 30 and 30 and all of that sort of stuff. Like there are so many different areas where your sports background could play into your favor and where you could leverage that for potential opportunities. So I definitely think it's worth sitting down and exploring that. Now all we've successfully done is just probably created even more confusion to try to find balance,
Right.
because you're like, okay, I got to find the balance between audiobooks and commercials. And now I'm sitting here and being like, by the way, don't forget to contact ESPN, and don't forget to find
Right.
out who's
A, B,
creating
C, and D.
documentary
Yeah.
contact for Netflix and Amazon Prime. And
And right. But it's like, okay, and just finding any way to, parse it out even a little bit, where if it's okay, just, hone in on the sports stuff and whatever the, in particular genres. So this is all, it's all a matter of taking everything that we've talked about, and then anything I process and consume, and like figuring out the best ways that it helps me to best go forward, or marketing, whatever it might be. So it's a lot. And it's like, here I am saying, like, not spread myself too thin. It's like, but now I want to now I want to try, dip my toe in all these different
but
genres. So
there's also a difference between spreading yourself too thin and spreading yourself strategically. And I think part of this is spreading
bingo. Yeah.
yourself strategically. When we all do the same thing, and this is something that's come up in a couple other summer series that I've done as well, but when we all do the same thing, in that we're all professional voice actors, we're all professionally trained, we all have home studios, we all have Source Connect, you've got to find those things that can make you a little bit different, that can make you stand out from the crowd in a little bit different way, that could potentially carve out a niche for you. And that's where I think leaning into the sports, that I think potentially carves out a niche for you. And I think it can help you with the balance a little bit, because now maybe to start at least, you're a little bit more strategic about who you're reaching out to. So maybe you're reaching out to people across a broader spectrum of genres, but when you're reaching out to them with the value proposition that you have in sports, you're intentionally looking for those opportunities in the sports space where what you bring to the table stands out. That potentially opens up some more doors for opportunity.
And then it doesn't sound so daunting, because it's like, well, I'm reaching out to people for things that I'm passionate about. So then
Yes.
it's not just like, oh, I got to find
I don't have to
I said I
convince
was
you to
going to
do
do
it.
50, right. I got to find 10 production companies to reach out to,
Yep.
and where it's like, oh no, when you can narrow it down with that unique value proposition in mind, it does make it feel a little more like, this isn't just homework. This is, back in
It's
school, it's
fun.
like, yeah, exactly. Like, it's not just you're doing it because you have to. You're doing it because there's that element, there's
Why
passion behind
wouldn't
it. And
I want to land that job that ties in directly with that thing that I'm so passionate about, right? Like it
right.
totally changes the dynamic, and you require a little bit less motivation to do the thing at that point.
Yes, sir. And that's, I think there are days where it's like, motivation kind of comes and goes, but when you can lock in on something. And I think and I think that's right there, as I know we're coming to the end. I think this is, I think a good jumping off point, whether, as opposed to like, how many publishers can I find on LinkedIn, or how many production companies can I find? But then, like, no, which ones do A, B, or C? And then it's like, okay, now we're targeting it a little bit more, and it's,
Which ones do sports? Which one have can you find a release schedule? Which one do sports, but also that have books coming up that you could find out about, that you could reach out and specifically ask about a
yeah.
particular book, like things like that, right? So it just allows you to be a little bit more strategic with your marketing, which helps you to find a little bit more of that balance, because it's not a spaghetti at the wall, not as much of a spaghetti at the wall scenario at that point.
Yeah, because I was just about ready to go out and buy more spaghetti.
All right, man. Well, I hope this has been helpful and created
Yes.
a little less confusion, not more, as you try to find that balance. But sometimes it's just about looking at things strategically and approaching them through that lens.
Yeah, we covered a lot, but I think kind of just sifting through all the spaghetti, and finding what tastes good, and what works. I think this is a good starting point, and just
We
a good
landed on
shift
the
in
meatball.
mindset. Yes, yes, landed on the meatball with the breadcrumbs in it. And it just can a good jumping off point for, as you
Right
said,
on.
strategic, not spreading yourself thin, which
Yep.
is a good way to look at it. So thank you.
That's awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show and asking your question. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks for doing this summer series. It's been helpful all across the board. So appreciate it.